They say libraries are safe, places where silence protects you, where the only things that haunt the halls are stories on dusty shelves. They lied. Every library holds more than books. Some hold what the books remember, and some hold what the people forgot to burn. My name is Psychosnare, and tonight, I'm taking you inside 3 places where silence wasn't peace. It was bait. Places where whispers crawl through walls, where time forgets how to move forward, and where a single photograph can pull your soul into the glass. Each story you're about to hear is true, or as true as the survivors could bear to tell it. Some are found in police reports that vanish days later. Some are pulled from letters sealed in evidence boxes. And one was recorded by someone who should have been dead. These aren't just hauntings, they're records. Each one connected by something older than superstition. A thread of libraries built over what should have stayed buried. Hollow Ridge, McMillan, Saint Vincent, 3 different towns, but one pulse, one rhythm, one hungry truth. You'll hear from those who try to leave and couldn't. You'll hear from those who looked too long into the dark between the shelves. And if you listen closely enough, you might hear them listening back. Because the thing about true stories is, they don't end when the storyteller stops talking. They keep echoing in whoever hears them. They move like smoke. They spread like memory. And once you let them in, they don't let go. So before we start, ask yourself this. Have you ever heard your name whispered when no one was around? Have you ever seen your reflection blink when your eyes were still? Have you ever felt like the silence in a room was waiting for you to speak first? If you have, you might already be part of these stories. This is an entertainment. This is a warning. The libraries you're about to visit remember every name that listens to them. And the ones who listen but don't believe, they tend to show up in the next story. So if you're brave enough to stay, turn the lights off, turn the volume up, don't pause, don't look away, because the record's already rolling. And if you stop before the end, you might hear your own voice whispering from somewhere inside the story. The moment you finish listening, check your reflection and count how many eyes are looking back. If it's more than 2, you listen too long. This is Psychosnare, and these are 3 disturbing true horror stories that happen inside libraries. I came back to Hollow Ridge because I had nowhere else to go. Chicago had taken everything from me. My peace, my savings, and my boyfriend. After the accident, I couldn't sleep without hearing water. Even in my dreams, it sounded like he was still drowning. So when Grandma called and told me the library needed part-time help, I packed what little I had and came home. Hollow Ridge looked smaller than I remembered, like the town itself was shrinking for me years. The streets were cracked, the air smelled like rain that never came, and even the streetlights buzzed like they were tired of being awake. The Hollow Ridge Public Library sat at the edge of town, like an old secret nobody wanted to admit was still there. It was built from thick brown bricks, square and plain, with one crooked bell tower that didn't ring anymore. Grandma said it used to be a church once, but most folk forgot that. Inside, it smelled like dust and lemon polish. The air conditioning rattled as if the building didn't want to breathe. There were rows and rows of books, all lined up like soldiers that hadn't been moved in decades. Grandma, Mrs. Ernestine Coleman, to everyone else, had worked there for 40 years. She was part of the furniture now, always wearing the same cardigan, always watching me with eyes that saw more than I wanted her to. On my first day, she hugged me, then looked me right in the face and said, "Don't shell past 10, baby. That basement breathes at night." She said it like a joke, but there was no smile behind her glasses. I laughed anyway. "You mean the air vents?" She didn't answer. She just walked away, dragging the scent of lavender soap and old paper with her. The first 2 weeks passed quietly. I shelved books, helped kids find storybooks, and watched old men argue about crossword puzzles. Most nights, the place was empty after 9. The silence was deep, the kind that makes you hear your own pulse. That was when I first noticed it. a sound that didn't belong to the building. It was faint, like someone whispering through a long tube. The kind of sound that makes you think you're imagining it, until it stops exactly when you stop to listen. Well, I told Grandma about it. She frowned and said, "Probably the pipes, baby. The building's older than me." But the way her fingers gripped her teacup told another story. Later that night, when I went to the basement to return a stack of flood record boxes, I felt it again. That same hum in the air. The temperature dropped like I'd walked into a refrigerator. I could see my breath, even though it was July. The basement was different from the rest of the library. It was narrow, with low ceilings and exposed pipes that dripped occasionally. The smell down there wasn't just old. It was wet, like rainwater trapped behind walls. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. I told myself it was fine. Just a basement. Just me overthinking. But when I set the last box on the table, I heard it clearly. "Hello." A whisper. Soft, stretched out. It didn't come from behind me or in front of me. It came from below. I froze. My ears strained. "Hello." I said back before I could stop myself. For a moment, nothing. Then the same voice, or something close to it, repeated. "Below." That was enough for me. I grabbed my tote bag and ran upstairs. When I got home that night, Grandma was still up, sitting by the window like she'd been waiting. "You went down there, didn't you?" she asked. I tried to laugh it off. "It's just the building settling, Grandma. It's old. Probably." She cut me off. "Don't try to make sense of what's older than you. That room has taken more than it's given." I didn't ask what she meant. Her tone was the same she used at funerals, final and sharp. I didn't sleep well that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that dark stairwell, the concrete walls, the flickering light. I dreamed of being underwater, someone calling my name through the current, their mouth moving but no bubbles rising. The next morning, Damon, the night custodian, was cleaning near the lobby when I came in. Damon was ex-military, built like someone who could break a door down with his shoulder, but too gentle to ever try. "You look like you saw a ghost," he said, sweeping. I told him what I'd heard in the basement, half expecting him to laugh. He didn't. He nodded slowly and said, "I heard something down there once too. Thought it was just me losing it. You know, sometimes those motion sensors go off when the place is empty. Cameras catch nothing though." The way he said it made my stomach tighten. He grinned, maybe to lighten it. Probably rats, or ghosts that read too much. But that night, when I walked past the security monitor, I saw one of those sensors flashing red. "Basement zone. Empty." I almost went down to check, but Grandma's words came back like a warning bell. That basement breathes at night. So I didn't. Not that night. 2 days later, it rained hard. The kind of storm that makes the power flicker. Damon went home early. Grandma left before sunset. I was closing up alone when the hum started again. It came from the floor. Not the vents, not the pipes, the floor. I bent down, pressing my hand against the tiles. The vibration was faint, like something moving under the foundation. A heartbeat, steady and low. Then came the whisper again, clear this time, like someone speaking through a crack in the wall. "Nia." It said my name. Every part of me locked up. I hadn't told anyone I was working late. No one else was in the building. I backed toward the door, staring at the stairwell that led down to the basement. The light above it flickered once, and went out. That was when the air shifted. Cold wind poured up from the darkness, carrying the faint smell of river water. And beneath it all, a voice, low, calm, familiar. "You left him to drown, Nia." My throat went dry. I dropped my keys. My breath hitched so hard I thought I'd pass out. I stumbled backward, grabbed my bag, and ran out into the rain. The whole walk home, I felt like someone was following me. I kept turning around, but the street was empty. Just puddles and the sound of water sliding into the drains. When I finally made it to Grandma's porch, she was already standing there, barefoot, still wearing her nightgown. She didn't even ask. She just said, "It's awake again." And then, under her breath, almost like she was afraid to say it out loud. The whispering room remembers the ones who don't listen. That night, lying in the dark, I kept hearing faint whispers through the walls of my room. Too soft to understand, too steady to be my imagination. That was the first night I realized something in that library wasn't haunted by the past. It was recording it. The next morning, I told myself I was done with the basement. No more night shifts. No more inventory. Whatever was in those archives could stay there forever. But curiosity is a cruel thing. The more I tried to ignore it, the more I kept hearing it. That whisper at the edge of thought, like my own name vibrating under my skin. Grandma watched me over breakfast with that quiet suspicion that only old people have. "You're still hearing it," she said. I didn't deny it. I couldn't. "I think it's just stress," I told her. She looked out the window. "It's not stress. It's memory." I didn't ask what she meant. I didn't want to know. At work that day, I kept close to Damon. The man seemed unbothered by everything, mopping floors, humming gospel under his breath. But when the conversation turned to the library's history, he fell silent. "You ever wonder why there's no blueprints older than the 60s? He asked me. I shrugged. "Probably just lost in a fire or something." He shook his head. "Ain't no fire. My uncle worked construction when they expanded this place. He said they found a wall under the foundation. Not brick, stone. And they didn't knock it down. They built around it. That stuck with me. Build around it. Like trying to seal something in." After closing, I was filing returns at the front desk when I heard Grandma's cane tapping behind me. "I'm locking up early," she said. "Why?" I asked. Her eyes darted toward the basement door. "It's June, baby." "So?" Her hands trembled on the cane. "June's when the ground gets soft." Before I could question her, she handed me a folded envelope, old, yellowed, and sealed in wax. On the front, in fading ink, "To the future librarian of Hollow Ridge." "What is this?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just whispered, "Don't open it there." I took the envelope home that night and placed it on my kitchen table. The paper felt brittle, older than Grandma herself. I told myself not to open it, but of course I did. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten in shaking ink. "If you hear the echo call your name, leave. It's not trying to talk. It's trying to learn." 1959. The words sank into me like cold water. Try to learn. I thought about how it had repeated me, that whisper twisting my words into something darker. Maybe it wasn't mocking me. Maybe it was studying me. That night, I played back the voice memo I'd recorded from my phone when I'd heard it. Static filled the first few seconds, then faintly a voice. My voice. "Who's there?" "You're here." And then silence. But right at the end, so soft it nearly disappeared under the static, I heard another line. "You left him to drown." My stomach dropped. That wasn't a recording from that night. That was something I'd said in Chicago, the night of the accident. I'd whispered it in the hospital hallway to no one, crying, begging for forgiveness. There was no way it could have been recorded. My phone buzzed suddenly. A text from an unknown number. It said, "Below." I dropped the phone. I didn't go to sleep that night. I sat up watching the rain bleed down my window until sunrise. When I got to the library the next day, Damon was waiting outside, pale and sweating. "You didn't hear?" he said. "Hear what?" "Mrs. Coleman didn't show this morning." The world tilted for a second. "What do you mean?" "She called me around 3, Damon said. Said the walls were talking again." He looked shaken, like he'd seen something he couldn't name. "She ever tell you about the other librarian?" he asked. "The one who disappeared?" He nodded. "Yeah, back in the 60s. My granddad said they found her shoes by the basement door. No body, no prints, just gone." I worked my shift like I was walking through fog. Every sound seemed louder. Every page turn, every door hinge. When the clock hit 8, I started shelving returns. In the quiet, I heard something new, a rhythmic clicking like someone tapping a nail against glass. It came from downstairs. I knew I shouldn't go. My hand shook on the stair rail. But something deeper, Guilt, maybe, or pride, pushed me down. The basement was dark. The light switch didn't work. My phone flashlight cut through a thin haze of dust that looked almost like mist. The whisper was waiting. "Nia." I froze. "What do you want?" "To read." The voice was behind the wall. I swear I could hear breath moving through the cracks. "You have stories." It sounded almost gentle, almost human. Then, slowly, the boxes stacked near the far corner began to tremble. One slid off the pile and burst open, spilling its contents: old books, waterlogged photos, and a rolled blueprint stamped 1923. When I unrolled it, my flashlight beam caught words at the bottom. St. Mark's Baptist Church, lower level plan. The church Grandma mentioned. The one that drowned in the flood. The basement hadn't been built on it. It was it. I stumbled back, the air thick with dust and whispers. My pulse slammed in my ears. Then I saw movement in the reflection of the basement window. A shadow, standing just behind me. I spun around. Nothing. The voice came again, closer now, sharper, not a whisper anymore. "You left him to drown, Nia." I screamed. The lights flickered, and for half a second, I saw a shape in the reflection. Tall, gray, mouth open in a soundless sermon. The flashlight flickered and went dead. And then the whisper turned into something like laughter. I ran. I didn't even grab my bag. I bolted up the stairs, nearly tripping over myself. The library doors didn't want to open. I had to shove them hard enough to break the latch. Outside, the sky was violet and trembling with thunder. As I turned back to look, every window of the library was lit, except the basement. That one was black, deep and bottomless, like an open mouth. When I reached Grandma's house, the front door was ajar. She was sitting in her armchair, eyes open, breathing shallow. On her lap was an old photo, a sepia image of a preacher standing before a church. Written on the back, Reverend Isaiah Burke, 1923, last seen before the flood. And below it, in her shaky handwriting, "He never stopped preaching." That night, the whisper came again, not from the library this time, but from the walls of my own room. "You left him to drown, Nia. He's waiting." Below, I pressed my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The voice wasn't coming from outside anymore. It was inside me. That's when I realized something terrifying. The whisper wasn't haunting the library. It was following the sound of my guilt. Warning, if you're still listening, and you've ever ignored your conscience the way I did, you're already feeding something. Don't let it find your name next. Subscribe now, or you'll hear it whisper when you're alone. And if you don't, you can explain why when it starts repeating your voice. I didn't go back to the library for 2 days. Grandma stayed in her room, barely speaking, barely eating. When she did, she only said one thing. "You woke it up." I wanted to ask what she meant, but something in her eyes stopped me. They weren't angry. They were scared. I tried to distract myself with normal things, cleaning, cooking, pretending to apply for new jobs online. But every time the house went quiet, I heard faint murmurs in the walls. Not words this time, just the sound of breath, like someone was whispering through the vents, waiting for me to respond. I told myself it was stress, exhaustion, anything but what I knew deep down. But the truth was, the whisper had found a way in. It had learned my name, my voice, my guilt, and now it was learning my silence. By the 3rd day, Grandma wouldn't leave her bed. Her hands kept twitching like she was holding something that wasn't there. On the nightstand sat the envelope she'd given me, the one that had warned me not to listen. Inside, I found another folded note, one I must have missed before. The paper was brittle, almost see-through from age. It said, "If you open this, it means it has found you. Don't speak to it. Don't think of it. Don't repeat what it says." At the bottom, written in different ink, someone else had added, "Too late for me." My blood ran cold. I tried to stay awake that night, watching TV just to drown out the silence. But around 2:14 a.m., the screen flickered, and the whisper slid through the static like it was crawling out of the wires. "Nia." I froze. The remote fell from my hand. "Come back." The TV flickered faster, lights stuttering against the walls like lightning. And then, faintly, under the hum of the old refrigerator, I heard it again, a voice I knew but didn't want to remember. "Help me." His voice. My ex, the one who drowned. I stood up so fast I nearly tripped. "No," I whispered. "You're not real." The voice didn't answer, but the whisper underneath did. Below. The next morning, I went back to the library. I don't even remember deciding to. It felt like my body moved on its own. The building was empty except for Damon, who was fixing a vent in the hallway. He looked up and frowned. "Thought you quit." "Just forgot something," I lied. He didn't push it. But as I passed, he said quietly, "If you're going down there again, don't." The basement stairs groaned under my weight. The air was colder than before, colder than it should have been for summer. Every step felt like walking deeper into someone's lungs. At the bottom, I turned on the light. Nothing moved. The boxes I'd seen knocked over were stacked neatly again. The floor was dry. Even the blueprint I'd found was gone, almost like someone had cleaned up after me. I walked slowly toward the back wall, where the whisper had come from. The bricks that were older, darker, rougher. You could still see water stains climbing halfway up. I pressed my ear against it. At first, nothing. Then faintly, "You left him to drown." My breath caught. "That's not you," I whispered. "You're not him. He's with me now." The voice was lower this time, heavier, and underneath it, I heard something like movement, shifting, scraping, like someone dragging something through shallow water. I stumbled back, knocking into a filing cabinet. The drawers rattled open, spilling folders across the floor. While I bent to pick them up, one caught my eye. The label was barely legible. 1959, missing librarian, E. Murphy. Inside were yellow police notes. Employee last seen after closing. No signs of forced entry. Last known location, basement archives. A black and white photo slipped out. A woman, smiling faintly, standing beside a brick wall identical to the one behind me. But what made me freeze wasn't her face. It was the shadow next to her. Tall, stretched, and shaped like someone whispering in her ear. The lights flickered once, then twice. I turned toward the stairwell and saw something at the top step. Bare feet. Grandma's voice called softly, "Nia." "Grandma." She didn't answer. I climbed halfway up the stairs. The light above flickered again. When it steadied, she was gone. Just gone. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking. The note from an envelope slipped from my pocket, landing face up on the step. The words glowed faintly, like the ink had absorbed light. "Don't repeat what it says." And from the darkness below, the whisper breathed against my ankles, close enough to feel. "Say it again." I backed away, tears stinging my eyes. "What do you want?" Silence. Then, to remember, I ran upstairs, gasping for air like I'd been underwater. I collapsed to the circulation desk, trying to catch my breath. The phone rang. I grabbed it, my hand still shaking, and said hello. The voice on the other end wasn't human. It was static, layered with echoes. "Below, below, below." I slammed the phone down, but it kept ringing again and again and again until finally the power cut out. The whole library went black. In the dark, I could hear the faintest sound, a woman humming an old hymn from somewhere beneath me. Then, soft as breath, "You're the new one." The air grew thick, pressing down on my chest. I stumbled to the front doors, but the locks wouldn't budge. In the reflection of the glass, I saw movement behind me, a shadow forming, mouth open like it was mid-sentence. Then everything went still. The whisper was gone. For a moment, I thought I'd imagined all of it. Then my phone vibrated. One new voicemail. No number. I pressed play. My own voice came through. "You left him to drown, Nia." Then silence, followed by a second voice, faint but rising. "Your turn." That was the first time I realized this thing wasn't trapped in the library. It didn't need walls or water. It could live in sound, in memory, in anything that listens long enough. And now, I'd listened too long. I didn't tell anyone what happened that night. Who would believe me? That a whisper could think, that could steal a voice. By morning, the power was back on. The library looked normal again, too normal. The front desk light hummed. The clock ticked. The world pretended nothing had changed. But I knew better. The whisper had learned me, and it was waiting for something. I walked through the library in silence, my shoes echoing across the floor. Every creak, every rustle made me flinch. The place smelled like dust and damp paper, but beneath it was another scent, old rain. I made my way back to the basement door. The knob felt warm this time, like someone had just touched it. I hesitated, but something deep in my chest said I had to go down. Not because I wanted to, because I had to finish it. The steps groaned under my weight. The light switch buzzed, but didn't turn on. The air below felt heavier, thick and wet, like breathing through cloth. I turned on my phone flashlight. Every shadow looked alive. In the center of the room stood a metal chair I didn't remember seeing before. On it sat my grandmother's old rosary, the chain broken in two. Next to it lay her name tag, Mrs. E. Coleman. I dropped to my knees, whispering, "Grandma." No answer, but the wall started whispering instead. Dozens of voices, layered, familiar. "You left him to drown. You're the new one." Below, it wasn't one ghost, it was all of them. Every person this place had taken. Their voices pressed together into a single, breathing sound that filled the air like a heartbeat. I covered my ears, but it didn't help. The sound wasn't around me anymore. It was inside me. I fumbled for my phone, my hand shaking. If I couldn't escape, maybe I could record it, prove it, leave something behind. I hit record and spoke through tears. "My name is Nia Coleman. It's June 21st, and I'm in the Hollow Ridge Public Library basement. If you find this, don't come down here." The voice, it's not what you think it is. The whispers grew louder, mocking me, overlapping my words. I raised my voice. "You don't get to have me. You don't get to use me." Silence. Then a single word, calm, measured, deep. "Confess." My throat tightened. I didn't confess. I backed against the wall. My light flickered, showing shapes on the floor, wet footprints leading into the corner where the wall met concrete. "Confess." My vision blurred with tears. He slipped. I tried to pull him out. The current. The air vibrated. The sound deepened until it felt like it was shaking my ribs. "Now you're here." Something cracked in the wall. A seam opened between bricks, wide enough for cold air, or something colder, to pour through. It sounded like someone breathing, deep and steady. My phone slipped from my hand and hit the floor. The flashlight beam rolled across the wall, catching the glint of something inside the gap, something wet and red. Then fingers. Gray, water-swollen fingers pressed through the crack, nails scraping the concrete. I screamed and stumbled back, knocking over a stack of boxes. Papers flew like birds scattering. The whisper rose again, dozens of voices weaving into one, chanting, "You're here now. You're here now. You're here now." I turned and ran for the stairs, slipping on the wet floor. Halfway up, my phone light died. Behind me, I heard footsteps, not running, just steady, slow, patient. When I reached the top, the door was closed. I twisted the knob. It didn't move. I slammed my shoulder against it again and again until my arm went numb. And then, the knob turned on its own. I yanked the door open, but it wasn't the library anymore. It was water. A wall of black water, standing upright, rippling like glass. I could see shapes floating beneath it. Faces, eyes open, mouths moving like they were speaking under the surface. And in the center, my grandmother. Her lips were moving too, whispering words I couldn't hear. I screamed, "Please, let me go." The water rippled once, and then everything stopped. The sound, the light, the air. The last thing I remember is falling forward. Not down, forward. Into the reflection. When I woke up, I was lying on the library floor. The sun was coming through the windows. Everything was quiet. The basement door stood open behind me. Inside, the walls were dry, the air warm, the boxes untouched. My phone was beside me. The screen cracked, still recording. I hit play. Static. Then my own voice, distant, echoing. You left him to drown. You don't get to use me. Then a long pause. And finally, a voice that wasn't mine. She's here now. I quit that day. Left Hollow Ridge without saying goodbye. I don't know what happened to Damon or if the library's still open. But sometimes, late at night, when everything's quiet, I swear I still hear the faintest sound, like a page turning underwater. Once, I picked up my phone and opened the recorder app. There was a new file. I didn't make it. It was labeled below. The timestamp was from the night I left town. I pressed play. Static. Then breathing. Then my grandmother's voice. Don't listen, baby. And right after that, my own voice whispering back. I already did. That was the moment I understood the truth. The whispering room doesn't haunt a place. It haunts whoever listens long enough to believe it. And now that you've listened to my voice all the way here, you've already let it in. Warning, if you're hearing echoes right now, stop and think. The voice that's repeating your thoughts, it's not imagination. It's testing you, just like it tested me. Before it learns your name, do one thing: subscribe. Because if you don't, when you finally hear your own voice whisper from the dark, it won't be asking for attention. It'll be asking for a place to stay. I used to think night shifts were peaceful. No customers, no noise, no boss breathing down your neck. Just you, the quiet, and time moving slow enough to hear your own heartbeat. That's why I took the job at McMillan Community Library. After everything that went down in Atlanta, the bills, the court mess, losing custody for a while, I needed quiet. I needed a place where the world wasn't shouting at me. My name's Terrence Holloway. Folks just call me T. Single dad, ex-warehouse hand, and for the last 3 months, the night security guard at a library built over ashes. McMillan Library sat at the corner of East Darien's oldest street, tucked between a Baptist church and an old train depot that had been burned to its bones 100 years ago. The town rebuilt on top of everything that burned. Tracks, foundations, history. That's what people in Darien do. They don't fix things, they build around them. Every night, I clocked in at 9 sharp, keys jangling, flashlight in my back pocket. I checked the doors, the study rooms, the boiler, then made rounds through the main hall until my shift ended at 2 a.m. Routine, predictable, the kind of work where you could breathe again. Sometimes my daughter, Lyric, waited in the staff lounge while I worked. She was 8, bright, nosy, way too smart for me. She'd color pictures on scrap paper or fall asleep on the couch while I made my rounds. Her presence made the building feel less lonely. At least until the night she looked up from her crayons and said, "Daddy, that man's been staring for a long time." There was no man, just the big window overlooking the old depot lot, a place full of fog and kudzu. The first time something fell off was a Tuesday night. Storm rolling in from the coast, thunder like artillery. I was checking the basement corridor when I caught a smell, smoke, sharp and oily, like burnt metal. I followed it to the end of the hallway. Nothing but concrete walls and a locked door marked archives, staff only. When I pressed my ear against it, I swore I heard a faint hiss, like steam escaping from a pipe. I pulled back fast. There were no boilers down there. That smell lingered though. Coal, oil, and something older, like charred paper. When I told Miss Cora, the head librarian, she didn't even look surprised. She just said, "If the passenger asks for a ticket, you tell him the route's closed." I laughed, thinking she was joking. She didn't laugh back. Miss Cora was the kind of woman you listened to. Gray hair in a bun, thin voice but eyes that could cut through you. She'd been at McMillan since the 70s. People said she knew every secret in that building. She used to talk about the depot fire like it happened yesterday. Said 13 passengers died locked inside the train cars. The conductor refused to open the doors, said the schedule was God's will. Locals turned the burned ground into the new library in 1908, a building over a graveyard of rail lines and gilt. Sometimes when it rained, you could still smell the smoke. That same week, I started hearing something during rounds. Footsteps, slow, heavy, always behind me, always in time with mine, but stopping when I stopped. I'd swing the flashlight back. Nothing there. Once, I heard the sound of chain dragging. Another time, a faint metal clang, like someone tapping a spike into wood. Lyric noticed it too. She said the building hummed when the lights flickered. She said the hum sounded like a train slowing down. Friday night, the alarm panel glitched. Red light flashing. Zone B, basement archive. My stomach twisted. That was the same locked door I'd heard the steam behind. I went down, keys shaking in my hand. The air got hotter the lower I went, thick enough to choke on. The door to the archives was open. Inside, smoke hung low like fog. My flashlight beam barely cut through it. Something scraped against the floor, metal on metal. Maintenance. I called. No answer. Then the emergency lights flickered on, glowing amber through the haze. And for half a second, I saw a shape. A man standing at the far end of the hall, dressed in black with a cap low over his face. Lantern in hand. I froze. "Sir, you can't be down here." He didn't move. Didn't even blink. I took a step closer. The smell of smoke hit hard, almost sweet. My flashlight flickered, then died. When it came back on, the man was gone. But the lantern glow was still there, floating midair for a heartbeat before vanishing. And in the silence that followed, I heard it. The faint, distant chuff of a train. I stumbled back up the stairs, chest pounding. By the time I reached the main floor, the alarm had stopped. Lyric was waiting by the front desk, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy," she said softly. "The man said we missed the train." My mouth went dry. "What man?" She pointed toward the window. "The one with the hat." He was waving. There was no one outside, just rain falling on the empty lot. Miss Cora came in early the next morning and found me sitting in the lobby, pale and shaking. When I told her what I saw, she sighed like someone carrying a weight too heavy to put down. "I was hoping it'd skip a year," she said. "What are you talking about?" I asked. She walked behind her desk, unlocked a bottom drawer, and pulled out a thick leather book, old, blackened at the edges. On the cover, Ledger of Departures. "This book writes names on its own," she said quietly. "Every summer near the depot fire's anniversary, a new one appears." I laughed once, too nervously. "That's not funny." She opened it to the last page. The most recent entry was from last year. Malcolm Dean, janitor. Then she pointed to the next line. The date had already written itself, tomorrow. The name field was blank. I felt the blood drain from my face. "You're saying it chooses people?" She nodded. "Every time the passenger runs his route." "Who's the passenger?" Her eyes met mine. "The one who never stopped taking tickets." That night, I tried to tell myself it was a joke, a twisted story old employees passed down. But the fear wouldn't leave. When you've lost as much as I have, you know the difference between a scare and a warning. I stayed close to Lyric that evening. She fell asleep on the couch in the break room, clutching her drawing pad. When I peeked at it later, my stomach turned. She'd drawn a train, black smoke spilling from its engine. And in the conductor's window, a small figure that looked like me. I sat there in the dark, listening to the storm outside, listening for the sound of wheels on track that shouldn't exist. At exactly midnight, the alarm light blinked once. Zone B. Then I heard it again, the faint hiss of steam rising from somewhere below, followed by a single, echoing clang, like someone striking iron against iron. The sound rolled up through the building, deep enough to shake the floor. Lyric stirred in her sleep, murmuring, "Daddy, it's boarding time." And then the lights went out. The lights came back after a minute, but the silence stayed heavy. Every clock in the building had stopped at 12:01. Even the exit signs buzzed like they were holding their breath. I tried to tell myself it was just a power surge, maybe a transformer hit by lightning. But deep down, I knew the hum that rolled through those walls wasn't from anything man-made. When morning came, Miss Cora was already waiting in her office. The ledger lay open on her desk like it had been expecting us both. "Something's wrong with the cameras," I said. "I know," she answered. "They never catch what's meant for the ledger." She turned the book around. The blank line under tomorrow's date was darker now, like invisible ink thickening beneath the surface, almost ready to spell a name. "Close it," I whispered. She didn't move. Once it starts writing, it doesn't stop. All day I try to shake it, but everywhere I went, the air smelled faintly of burnt wood. Every surface carried a thin layer of black dust that smudged when I touched it. Lyric stayed quiet, drawing in the corner. When I asked what she was working on, she said, "The man with the lantern wanted me to draw the ticket." Her crayon scraped the paper. She was drawing a rectangle, neat lines, tiny numbers in the corner, and one word written across the center in shaky letters. Holloway. I snatched it away, heart slamming in my chest. "Where'd you hear that name?" She blinked. "He told me. Said you forgot to punch in." By nightfall, the smell got stronger, smoke mixed with iron. Miss Cora refused to go home. She sat near the front desk, the ledger open beside her like a confession. When the clock hit 10, she looked up. "You should leave, T. Take your little girl and go." "I'm not running from paper," I said. She shook her head slowly. That's what every name said before it appeared. Her words hit like cold rain. At 11, I started my rounds. Basement first. My flashlight beam bounced off walls slick with humidity. The air was too warm, heavy like breath. Halfway down, I noticed something on the wall. Long dark smears running across the concrete. At first, I thought it was mold. But when I touched it, my fingers came away black and gritty. Soot. The hum of the building deepened. A slow pulse that made the hair on my arms rise. When I reached the bottom, the archives door was open again. Lantern light flickered just beyond it. Inside, the room glowed dim orange, lit by something unseen. Rows of shelves stretched farther than they should have. In the center sat a metal desk, and on it, another book. I stepped closer. The pages were blank, but heat radiated off them like breath from a furnace. As I watched, faint letters burned through the paper. Not ink, scorch marks forming words. T. Holloway, security. My own name. I stumbled backward. No. Something moved behind me. A soft shuffle, followed by the clang of metal. When I turned, a shadow filled the doorway. Hat, coat, lantern in hand. The passenger. He didn't speak. He just raised the lantern higher, and in its light, I saw the outline of a railroad spike driven into his chest. The smell of coal smoke wrapped around me, choking. Then, in a voice like grinding steel, he said, "Ticket, please." I bolted up the stairs, 2 steps at a time. The lights flickered, bulbs bursting as I passed. Somewhere behind me, the sound of wheels screeched against rails that shouldn't exist. When I reached the main floor, Miss Cora was standing by the desk, hands trembling. The ledger was open. My name had burned clear across the page. "I told you to leave," she whispered. "How do we stop it?" I shouted. She shook her head. "You don't stop a schedule, son. You just pray the line skips you." Then she froze, eyes wide. "Where's your daughter?" I ran to the staff lounge. The couch was empty, blanket on the floor. Her backpack sat open, crayon scattered. On the table lay her drawing pad, open to a new page. She'd drawn herself, standing on a platform beside a black train. In the window, I saw my own face, and above the drawing, written in red crayon, "See you at the last stop, Daddy." My knees gave out. I could still smell smoke, stronger now, crawling up from the basement like the building itself was burning from underneath. Miss Cora's voice carried from the hallway, shouting my name. Then the fire alarm blared, a piercing shriek that rattled my teeth. I looked up. Every exit light turned red, not the normal soft red, glowing like open embers. And over the alarm, faint but clear, came the hiss of steam, the sound of an engine coming alive. Miss Cora appeared at the doorway, face pale in the red light. "It's boarding," she whispered. "Where's Lyric?" I demanded. "She's on the route now." Her eyes filled with tears. "Every conductor needs a passenger." I shook my head. "No, I'll find her." I pushed past her and ran for the basement. The stairs shook with every step. Halfway down, I heard voices, dozens whispering in rhythm with the clanging metal below. "All aboard! All aboard!" The air grew hotter, flames licking the edges of the doorframe. When I burst into the archives room, it wasn't a room anymore. It was a tunnel. Rails gleamed across the floor, stretching into black smoke. Lanterns lined the walls, swinging gently as if from a passing breeze. And standing in the middle of the tracks, holding Lyric's hand, was the passenger. She turned and smiled. "Daddy, I got your ticket." My body wouldn't move. The sound of the approaching train grew louder, the ground trembling beneath me. "Run, Lyric," I screamed. But she only tilted her head, eyes wide and shining. "He says you can't miss your route." The train's whistle screamed, a long, mournful cry that shook the air. And then everything went white. I woke up alone on the lobby floor, choking on smoke that wasn't there. The lights buzzed overhead. The alarm was silent. Miss Cora was gone. So was Lyric. On the front desk lay the ledger, open to a fresh page. Tomorrow's date. A single word beneath it, departed. No name, just blank space. Waiting. Warning, if you ever hear your name whispered when nobody's around, don't turn toward it. That's how the passenger checks the schedule. Subscribe now, before the next stop's yours. And if you won't, maybe your name's already written in blank space, just waiting to burn through. I didn't sleep after that night. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that whistle, far away but moving closer. I kept seeing Lyric on that platform, smiling through smoke that wasn't real. Every time I blinked, I saw her little red jacket disappearing into the dark. The police said she was missing. Searched the whole building. Nothing. No footprints, no broken windows, no sign of fire. Just my fingerprints on every door and the smell of burnt metal in the air. They thought I'd lost it. Maybe I had. But I know what I saw. I saw a train in a place that doesn't have tracks anymore. And a man who collects the living like tickets. Miss Cora never came back either. The town said she retired suddenly, but her house was empty when I went there. Her front door was unlocked. On a kitchen table, I found her librarian badge and the ledger, lying open like it had been waiting. A new page had already started to burn through. The date was today. My name, Terrence Holloway, and below it, a second line forming slowly, the letters curling into existence like smoke. Lyric Holloway. I slammed the book shut. It burned my hand. By nightfall, I was back at the library, even though every sane part of me told me not to go. The air felt heavier now, the smell of coal drifting through the vents like perfume. When I stepped through the door, every light flickered once, like the building recognized me. The floors were warm under my boots. Too warm. I followed the hallway toward the basement. The sound came first this time, a low hum that vibrated through the walls. At first, I thought it was the boiler. Then I realized it had rhythm. 4 beats. Pause. 4 beats. Pause. Like the chug of wheels on rails. At the top of the stairs, I hesitated. That was the moment I should have walked out, found help, done anything else. But when I called out my daughter's name, I swear I heard her answer from below. "Daddy." My knees nearly buckled. "Lyric. It's almost time." Her voice was faint, muffled, like through static. I started down the steps, one hand gripping the rail. The air grew hotter with every foot. Halfway down, I saw the faint glow again, orange light flickering from the bottom. When I reached the basement, I stopped cold. The floor wasn't concrete anymore. It was metal, rails cut across the ground, vanishing into a tunnel of smoke that hadn't been there before. The air shimmered with heat. The sound of the train was closer, the rhythmic grind of wheels pulling through time. And there she was, Lyric, standing in the middle of the tracks, clutching something in her hands. A piece of torn paper. A ticket. I ran toward her, but every step felt heavier, like the air itself was holding me back. "Baby, come here," I shouted. She looked up at me, eyes wide and calm. "He says we can ride together now." "Who says that?" "The conductor." I turned and saw him stepping from the smoke. Same black coat, same cap, same hollow stare. His lantern swayed in one hand. The other held a rusted pocket watch that ticked in uneven beats. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but it filled the whole room. "The route never ends, Mr. Holloway. You just boarded late." I raised my flashlight like it was a weapon. "You can't have her." He tilted his head. "The ledger disagrees." The sound of the approaching train grew louder, shaking dust from the ceiling. Lyric took a step closer to him. "Don't," I shouted. "Lyric, he's not real." She smiled sadly. "You said Mommy was watching over me. Maybe she's on this train too." My throat locked. "No, baby. Please. Don't." The light from the tunnel grew brighter. The smell of smoke and oil wrapped around me, pressing on my lungs. The passenger turned to me. "You can't break a schedule, Mr. Holloway." He held out his lantern. Inside, behind the glass, a faint image flickered. Miss Cora's face. Eyes open. Silent scream frozen forever. I swung the flashlight at him. The beam went straight through. He didn't even flinch. His eyes caught the light for half a second, and I saw it. Empty sockets filled with burning ash. Lyric's voice broke through the roar. "Daddy, he says it's okay. You don't have to be scared." The heat was unbearable. My skin felt raw, air boiling in my throat. The rails beneath us began to glow, red lines splitting through the metal floor. I reached her just as the train came through the tunnel. It didn't arrive, it manifested. Smoke and light collided, forming a black engine that howled as it broke through the walls of reality. The front of the train was carved with symbols I couldn't understand, letters that twisted the longer I stared. The passenger stepped forward, raising his hand toward Lyric. "Ticket," he said. She handed him the torn paper. I screamed her name, grabbed her arm, and my hand passed right through her. She looked at me, tears rolling down her face. "I'm sorry, Daddy." The passenger turned his lantern toward me. The light hit my chest, searing, hot, like it was burning through skin. "You missed your last stop." Then came the sound of metal screaming, brakes, wheels, steam, and a flash so bright it erased everything. When I opened my eyes, I was standing in the same spot. The tunnel was gone. No rails, no train, just the empty basement, quiet and cold. My hands were black with soot. My shirt smelled like smoke. And at my feet lay the torn paper. I picked it up. Not a ticket. A ledger page. The words were scorched into the paper. T. Holloway departed. And beneath it, faint but still burning, L. Holloway departed. I dropped it and ran. When I burst outside, dawn was breaking. The street was empty, but across the sky, through the morning clouds, I saw something that made my knees give out. A long, thin line of black smoke stretching over the horizon, straight and perfect, like a rail in the sky. And faintly, carried on the wind, the sound of a train whistle. 3 short bursts. Pause. 1 long. Departure signal. I didn't go back to the library for a week. Couldn't even drive past it. Every time I saw those bricks, I heard the whistle again. Faint, steady, like it was calling from under the road. I stayed in a motel off Highway 17, curtains drawn tight. The sound still came at night, always at 12:01. The time the lights had gone out. The time my life stopped moving forward. People tried to comfort me. "She'll turn up," they said. "Kids wander. Maybe she ran away." They didn't smell the smoke. They didn't hear the hiss in the pipes that sounded like steam. No one but me understood what it meant when the air got heavy and the floor started to hum. The nights got longer. I stopped eating, stopped talking to the cops. All I could think about was Lyric's face, that calm, knowing smile, like she understood something I didn't. I'd wake up to find black soot under my nails. Sometimes, I'd see my reflection in the mirror blink half a second too late. By the fourth night, I realized the world around me had started skipping. Cars outside passed slower than they should. My watch would lose time, then gain it back. The hum in the walls of the motel room beat like a heart. For beats. Pause. For beats. Pause. The same rhythm. The train's rhythm. That's when the letters started arriving. Plain envelopes. No stamp. Slipped under my door sometime after midnight. Each one carried a single page torn from the ledger. Same handwriting, same blackened edges. First page, Cora Bennett, departed. Second page, Malcolm Dean, departed. Third page, blank, except for one line written in fresh ink. Train delayed, awaiting next conductor. I crumpled it, threw it across the room, but the smell of burnt paper stayed in my hands. When I turned to the mirror, the soot around my fingernails had thickened, darker, spreading up my arms. The fifth night, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove back to McMillan Library. The place was dark, boarded up, closed for renovation sign on the door. But the door was unlocked. They never really close, do they? Buildings like that, they wait. Inside, it looked like a graveyard. Sheets covering the desks, empty shelves, dust swirling in the beam of my flashlight. The air felt thicker the deeper I went, and under the smell of dust, that familiar scent, smoke, oil, and something sweet like rusted iron. The basement door stood open. The stairs were wet. When I reached the bottom, the tunnel was back, longer this time, stretching beyond sight. Lanterns hanging in rows on both sides, flickering weakly. And there she was, Lyric, standing on the platform, small hands folded, face pale as ash. "Baby," I whispered, stepping forward. "You don't have to stay here." She smiled faintly. "I'm not supposed to talk to you anymore." "Please," I said. "We can go. We can start over." Her eyes softened, but she shook her head. "The train doesn't stop twice, Daddy." My knees gave out. "Then I'll stay with you." "You can't. You're the next conductor." The words hit harder than anything else ever could. I wanted to deny it, scream, run, but the lanterns along the tunnel started to swing all at once. A low roar filled the air, a vibration that rattled my bones. The passenger stepped out of the smoke. This time, he didn't look ancient. He looked like me. Same face, same eyes, same tremor in the hands. He smiled without warmth. "Every route needs its keeper. I'm not you," I said. He tilted his head. "You will be." Behind him, the train thundered closer, a shadow with wheels. Sparks flew from the rails, showering the tunnel in burning light. Lyric backed away slowly, fading into the smoke. "Daddy, it's okay," she whispered. "It's better if you come now. It's quieter here." The words broke something inside me. I took a step toward her, then another. Heat wrapped around me, searing through my clothes. The passenger reached out, and for a second, our hands touched. The contact was blinding. Memories rushed through me. Miss Cora screaming, the old depot fire, faces pressed against train windows, pounding fists, voices begging to get out. I saw them all the passengers who never made it off the train. And at the end of the line, I saw my daughter's reflection smiling through smoke. Then it was quiet. I opened my eyes. The tunnel was gone again. No train, no Lyric, no passenger, just the faint hum of lights above me and the smell of soot still clinging to my clothes. On the floor lay the ledger, open to a fresh page. No words yet, just black ash swirling across the paper. It moved like ink alive, forming letters I couldn't read. I reached out, shaking, and touched the page. The ash burned into my skin, sinking beneath it. A voice whispered inside my head, "You're right on time." I dropped the book, backed away, and the sound came again. Not the whistle this time. Footsteps, dozens of them, coming from the darkness beyond the shelves. I turned and ran for the stairs, but every hallway twisted back on itself. Doors that should have led outside opened into reading rooms. Windows showed fog and moving lights, not streets. The library had changed. It wasn't a building anymore. It was a station, and I wasn't supposed to leave. The footsteps drew closer, echoing metal clanks, slow and steady. Then the whistle screamed. I fell to my knees, hands over my ears, eyes shut tight. The floor shook like thunder. The heat roared through the walls, the ceiling, the very air around me. And under that noise, a single voice spoke, calm and clear. "All aboard, conductor." When I opened my eyes again, I was standing behind the front desk, uniform pressed, lantern in hand. The building was quiet. Through the front windows, I saw the fog outside moving like smoke. I could hear the faint clatter of wheels in the distance, calling for me. The ledger lay open before me, its pages flipping on their own. On the newest one, written in thick, glowing ink, "Terrence Holloway, conductor." Now I sit here every night, waiting for the next name to appear. The next stop, the next passenger. The train never ends. It just keeps moving, town to town, library to library, collecting the ones who stay past closing. And somewhere in the endless hum of the rails, I can still hear Lyric's laughter, small, echoing, carried in the smoke. She's still writing, still smiling, still calling me daddy. Warning, if you're still listening to this, you've already boarded. Once you hear the whistle, there's no getting off. So either subscribe now, stay ahead of the route, or keep scrolling, and we'll see your name in the ledger tomorrow. When I drove back into Saint Vincent, Louisiana, it felt like the whole town had been left on pause. Same narrow streets, same leaning power poles, same heavy air that smelled like wet sugar and rust. I hadn't been here since my mother's funeral. The Saint Vincent Parish Library sat just past the courthouse, a pale brick building crouched under a web of live oak branches. When I was a kid, Mama used to bring me here on Saturdays. She'd say, "The library remembers more than people do." I didn't understand what she meant then. I think I do now. I'm Monique Dupree, 28, archivist by degree and mistake by choice. After Mama passed, the town asked if I could help sort through the library's old collection, mostly boxes sealed after a fire back in the 30s. They said the humidity was ruining what little survived. I said yes because I needed the money, but also because I needed to see what she'd been so afraid of. When I pushed through the doors that first morning, the air hit me, thick, cold, and damp. The smell was the same as I remembered. Old paper, mildew, and faint smoke. Something else, too. Something metallic. Behind the front desk sat elder Ruth Marcel, small woman, silver hair and a scarf, eyes sharp as glass. "Josephine's boxes are waiting downstairs," she said, before I even introduced myself. "Josephine, the archivist who came before me," she said, "before all of us." The basement was cooler than the main floor, lined with cabinets, and old photographs hung crooked on the walls. Ruth pointed toward a stack of gray crates. "That's the fire collection. Handle gentle." And Monique, she leaned closer. "Don't stare too long at the portraits. They'll stare back." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. The first box I opened was filled with brittle documents, ledgers, letters, labels half-eaten by mold. At the bottom lay a wrapped bundle of glass plates, photographic negatives, the kind from the early 1900s. Each one showed pairs of human eyes, arranged in rows like insects pinned for display. No faces, no bodies, just eyes. I held one toward the light bulb overhead. For a second, the reflection swallowed me, the pupils expanding until I couldn't see the glass anymore. Then the light flickered, and the eyes blinked. I dropped the plate. It hit the floor but didn't shatter, just rang like metal. Ruth appeared behind me, silent as smoke. "Careful," she said. "They're older than truth." That night at Mama's house, I couldn't shake it. Every time lightning flashed through the windows, I saw those eyes in the glass. When I closed my own, I felt them under my lids, looking back. Around 3:30, I woke to the faint click of a camera shutter. No camera in the room, no phone on the nightstand. Just that dry click-click followed by the soft creak of the floorboards. I told myself it was the storm. I didn't believe myself. The next morning, Ruth was waiting with coffee. "You didn't sleep," she said. I shrugged. Josephine Baptiste never slept much either. That name again. She handed me a burned ledger, edges curled inward. The first line read, "Property inventory, Saint Vincent Sugar Mill / converted library site, 1932. At the bottom, in handwriting darker than the rest, "Fire contained to archives. Archivist Baptiste unaccounted for." I asked Ruth what happened to her. "She kept records she wasn't supposed to," Ruth said. "Tried to name the nameless. Then she turned and climbed the stairs, leaving me alone with the silence." The storm returned that afternoon. Rain rattled the windows, thunder low and constant. I sat at the desk, scanning the glass negatives into the computer. Each image appeared for a second. Then the scanner glitched, static lines across the screen. On the fifth negative, the software flagged movement. I stared hard. The pupils had shifted. Just a fraction, but enough. They were looking at me. I shut the computer and backed away. The scanner kept running, light sliding back and forth with no photograph beneath it. Then the overhead lights flickered once. In that half-second of darkness, the portraits on the wall, the ones Ruth told me not to look at, had changed. Every painted face now had the same eyes. Josephine's eyes, maybe, or mine. It was hard to tell anymore. By closing time, the building hummed like a hive. I could hear the wind outside, but it sounded like whispers coming through the walls. Every step I took echoed twice. I found Ruth in the upstairs reading room, staring out the rain-fogged window. "Do you ever hear things?" I asked. "All the time," she said softly. That's why I stopped answering. She turned toward me, and for a second I swore her pupils shimmered, tiny reflections moving inside them, like reels of old film spinning. Then she blinked, and it was gone. I told myself I'd quit in the morning. But when I tried to leave, my car wouldn't start. Battery dead. The streetlights flickered, and the library's windows glowed faintly, even though the power was off. From inside, I thought I saw a figure standing behind the glass door, tall, thin, holding something round like a camera lens. Then lightning flashed, and the figure was gone. I drove back home in silence, the rain smearing everything into gray lines. When I reached the front porch, an envelope waited under the mat. My name on the front in perfect, ink-black handwriting. Inside, a single photograph. Me, standing in the basement, staring straight into the camera. Except my eyes were missing. I don't know how long I sat there before the next flash of lightning made me look up. Across the street, in the dark reflection of my car window, I saw a movement. A face. Mine, but smiling, eyes wide and unblinking. I dropped the photo and ran inside. Now every mirror in the house is covered. Every window too. Doesn't help, because even with the lights out, I could still feel them, watching from somewhere behind the glass. I didn't sleep, not even a minute. Every sound in that house felt alive. The hum of the fridge, the tick of the hallway clock, the rain sliding against the glass. I sat on the floor, clutching the photo of myself without eyes until the edges went soft from sweat. At sunrise, I packed a bag, grabbed my keys, and drove straight back to the library. If those glass negatives were real, I needed to destroy them. If they weren't, I needed to know what was wrong with me. The parking lot was empty, the sky washed clean after the storm. But when I reached the front doors, they were already unlocked. The alarm panel blinked steady green, disarmed. Someone was inside. The building felt warmer than before. The smell of wet wood and old smoke clung to everything. I followed the faint sound of movement to the basement. The air thickened the farther down I went, heavy with that same metallic taste, like holding a penny under your tongue. At the bottom step, I froze. Every portrait on the wall had been taken down. In their place were the glass negatives, each one hanging from a thin wire. Hundreds of eyes staring, overlapping, whispering. Yes, whispering. Tiny breaths of sound, too soft to form words, but heavy enough to crawl into my head. "Ruth," I called out. No answer. I walked deeper, the soles of my shoes sticking to the damp floor. As I passed the hanging negatives, the whispering grew louder. Each eye turned slightly toward me, following as I moved. At the back of the room, a single lamp burned on the old desk. On it lay another open box, bigger than the others. Inside were dozens of new plates wrapped in cloth, each one labeled with a date, each date recent. The top one read, May 14th, due pre-M. My throat closed. That was today. I unwrapped it with shaking hands. The glass was cold, slick with moisture. At first, I didn't recognize what I was looking at. Then the light shifted, and I saw my own face. Except the eyes were black pits, like they'd been burned out. A faint reflection hovered behind me in the image. A second face, pale and smiling. Josephine Baptiste. I'd seen her photo in the records upstairs. But this version wasn't an old woman. She was young, alive, standing right behind me. The lamp flickered. The whispering turned into a low hum that vibrated the air. The eyes on the wires began to swing, softly at first, then harder, as if moved by breath. I turned around slowly. She was there. Josephine stood in the doorway, her white archivist coat charred and hanging loose from her shoulders. Her eyes were clouded, filmed over like glass left in fire too long. But when she smiled, her voice came out calm and sweet. "You handled them. I couldn't move. You died in the fire." "No, I was kept." Her fingers brushed along the row of hanging plates as she walked closer. Each one chimed faintly when she touched it. Every archivist leaves part of herself behind. Eyes remember. Eyes record. She stopped an arm's length away, head tilted. "Your mother tried to burn them. She didn't want me to find you." The room tilted sideways. "My mother. She was one of us. She saw too much." Josephine reached toward me, palm up. "Now you've seen too. It's your turn to keep the records." I backed away fast, knocking over the lamp. The light went out, and for a second, everything went black except the faint blue shimmer of the negatives. The eyes glowed faintly in the dark, every single one staring right at me. Then came the sound, the click of a camera shutter. One, then another, then dozens, rapid and overlapping, like a crowd taking pictures all at once. I dropped to my knees, hands over my ears, screaming for it to stop. The flash of white light seared behind my eyelids. When it faded, Josephine was gone. The hanging plates were still, but something felt wrong. My skin prickled. I raised my hands to my face. The skin around my eyes was burning, hot enough to sting. While I looked down at my fingers, they were streaked with black ash. In the reflection of the metal lamp base, I saw myself. Eyes dark, pupils wide and glassy. Inside each one, faint silhouettes moved like people trapped behind windows. I ran. Didn't think. Just ran. Up the stairs, past the main hall, out into the blinding daylight. I could still feel the hum under my feet, the building pulsing like a heartbeat. I drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Every shadow looked alive. Every passing window reflected my face, except the eyes didn't blink when I did. When I got inside, the house smelled like old smoke again. My phone buzzed on the counter, a new message from an unknown number. Just one image. The library basement. Empty, except for one thing. A new photograph pinned to the wall. Me. And under it, in neat handwriting, Dupree M. Archivist, 2025. I threw the phone across the room. The screen cracked, still glowing faintly, and from the speaker came a whisper, soft and clear. "Keep the records, Monique." I tried washing my hands, but the soot wouldn't come off. It smeared instead, black lines creeping up my wrists like veins. In the bathroom mirror, my reflection smiled before I did. I screamed and shattered the glass with my elbow. When I looked down, shards glittered in the sink, each one holding a tiny version of my face, and in every version, my eyes were gone. The lights flickered once, then the camera sound again. Click. I turned toward the doorway. Ruth stood there. Her eyes were pure white. "You're part of the archive now," she said softly. "Don't fight it. Eyes don't die. They just collect." Then she lifted her phone, camera aimed at my face, and the flash exploded white. "Warning, if you ever find your picture taken when you're alone, don't delete it. It's already part of the collection. Subscribe now, before your own eyes end up cataloged under your name. If you don't, the next photograph might already be waiting for you to notice it." When I woke up, I was still on the bathroom floor. The mirror was shattered, blood mixing with the water from the broken faucet. Morning light poured through the blinds in thin, straight lines that cut across the room like prison bars. My phone kept vibrating across the tiles. Every time the screen lit, it showed the same message. "You're late for cataloging." No number, no name, just that. I didn't remember sending it. Didn't remember falling asleep. But my eyes burned like I'd been staring at a screen all night. When I stumbled to the sink and looked into the largest shard of mirror, my reflection stared back, slow, delayed, like it was catching up. And right before it matched me, it smiled. By the time I reached the library, the air outside was thick enough to drink. Fog rolled off the bayou, curling around the street lamps. The building loomed ahead, its windows glowing with that faint, wrong light again, the kind that looks alive. The front doors were already open. Ruth stood behind the desk, dressed in black this time. Her hair was pinned back, her eyes clear, too clear. "Morning, archivist," she said, like nothing strange had ever happened between us. "I quit," I told her. She smiled gently. "You can't quit something written." She slid a thick folder across the desk. Inside were printed photographs, all of me, working, walking, sleeping. Hundreds of them. Each one had a code scrawled in red ink on the back. SV, 2025, M.D. "What is this?" I whispered. "The collection's index," she said. "Every archivist becomes one eventually." She motioned toward the staircase. "I'll show you where they keep the originals." The basement had changed again. The air was dry this time, not humid, like something had burned all the water out of it. Rows of new cabinets lined the walls, each drawer labeled with a year, each keyhole shaped like an eye. Ruth moved easily through the aisles, humming something that sounded like an old hymn. When she stopped, she pulled open a drawer marked 2025. Inside were dozens of glass negatives. Every one of them showed the same thing. A single human eye, all belonging to me. Different angles, different lighting, but always open, always watching. Ruth looked back at me. "Every archivist must give sight to the record." "You mean my eyes?" She nodded, unbothered. "You won't lose them. You'll just share them." The humming grew louder. It wasn't coming from Ruth anymore. It was the building. A low, pulsing vibration, steady as a heartbeat. Every cabinet handle started to rattle in rhythm, and in that moment, I understood what I'd been hearing all along. The library wasn't haunted. It was alive, built from all the memories burned into it. Every archivist who'd worked here had been absorbed. Every voice, every face, every truth they'd try to hide. Ruth placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Don't be afraid. Eyes remember what people forget. We keep the past safe." Her grip tightened. "And now, you'll keep it too." Something cold slid through me. A presence. Not touching, but inside, like breath being replaced with another kind of air. The whispering started again, stronger than before, echoing through my skull. Record her! Record her! I jerked away, shouting, "No!" The lights overhead flickered, glass humming like insect wings. When they steadied, Ruth was gone, but her voice was still there. You can't unsee what's already recorded. I ran through the aisles, drawers flying open as I passed. Hundreds of eyes staring from within, all focused on me. The hum rose until it felt like a scream buried in the walls. When I reached the stairs, the door was gone. In its place stood a single, silver-framed mirror. My reflection wasn't mine anymore. My eyes were pure black, pupils stretching like oil. Behind me, faint outlines moved inside the reflection. Hundreds of people crowded together, their hands pressed against invisible glass. One of them stepped forward. Josephine. Her smile was calm, but her voice carried weight. Say it. Admit it. Admit what? That you wanted to see what your mother saw. That's why you came back. I shook my head. I wanted answers. You wanted her truth. Truth is always hungry. The mirror pulsed. My reflection's mouth opened on its own. We're running out of archivists. The hum turned into a roar. The walls stretched outward, shelves bending, glass plates falling and shattering around me. Each one that hit the ground released a flash. A face, a scream, a life burned into air. My own voice joined them. I didn't mean to scream, but it came out anyway, raw and electric. The reflection smiled wider. Perfect. The record is almost complete. Something inside me broke. I grabbed a metal stool and swung it at the mirror. The glass exploded outward, shards slicing my arms. But instead of hitting the floor, the fragments hung midair, spinning slowly, each one glowing faintly. In every shard, my reflection blinked separately, hundreds of tiny Moniques staring back. Then, all at once, they whispered, "Record her," and the world went dark. When I woke again, I was standing in the archive hall. The lights burned steady now, warm and golden. Everything was silent. I looked down and realized I was holding a camera. Old, heavy, brass, casing cool against my fingers. I raised it slowly. The lens reflected 1,000 tiny eyes. Behind me, the whispers had stopped, but I could still feel them, watching, waiting. I didn't know what would happen if I took the picture, only that some part of me already knew I had to. I pressed the shutter. Click, a bright flash, and then silence. I don't know how long I've been down here. There's no clock anymore. The library hums in rhythms instead of hours. Each pulse feels like breath, in out alive. Sometimes I hear footsteps upstairs, but no one ever comes down. I think they're echoes from before, or maybe from after. I should be terrified, but the fear's gone now. All that's left is understanding. The camera in my hand feels natural now. It hums when I hold it, soft like a heartbeat pressed to my palm. When I raise it to my face, the air shifts. The lens doesn't just see, it remembers. Every click captures something unseen, faint outlines of people walking between worlds. They don't notice me. They're too busy whispering to each other, faces blurred like melted wax. I looked at one of the photos earlier. At first, it showed nothing but gray fog. Then, as I stared, shapes began to rise from the paper. A woman holding a child, their eyes empty, their mouths open like they were singing without sound. The child's hand looked familiar. Small, curled, Lyric's hand. My throat closed, and the camera went cold in my grip. When I blinked, the image was gone, burned into the air like smoke. That's when I noticed the newest drawer in the archive. A simple brass handle with fresh lettering. 2026. Incoming. Inside were glass plates still blank, waiting. I touched one, and a faint pulse ran up my arm. The whispering started again, soft and careful. Keep them safe. Keep them seen. Keep them. I sat there in the half-dark, staring at my reflection in the glass plate. My eyes were darker now, no color left. But inside them, something moved. For a second, I saw Mama. Her face, calm but sad. "You shouldn't have come back," she said. "I needed to know what you were hiding." I whispered, "The same thing you're hiding now." Her image flickered, replaced by Josephine's smiling face. "Every archivist thinks they can destroy the record," she said. "But what's written isn't owned. It's remembered." The walls around me began to glow faintly, like paper catching flame without heat. Rows of portraits lit one by one. Every archivist that had come before me. All their faces turned toward mine. Their mouths opened. Whispers merged into one voice. "Show us." The air pressed down on me, heavy as water. The camera burned in my hands. I raised it out of reflex, and the whisper grew louder. "Show us what you've seen." I pressed the shutter. Click. The flash didn't fade this time. It spread. White light crawling across the room, swallowing the shelves, the portraits, the air itself. For one endless moment, I was standing in pure brightness. And in that brightness, I saw everything. The Hollow Ridge Library, its whispering walls alive with old breath. The McMillan Depot, smoke rising from tracks that never cooled. And now, Saint Vincent, the last stop. 3 places, 1 network of memory. 3 libraries built where something refused to die. They weren't separate stories. They were chapters of the same record. When the light dimmed, I was standing in the main hall again. The furniture was gone. No shelves, no desks, no stairs, just smooth marble stretching in every direction. In the center stood Ruth, Josephine, and a dozen other archivists, all waiting, all watching. Josephine spoke first. "Now you understand. What happens to me? What happens to all of us? We keep the eyes open." Ruth stepped forward, placed her hand on my cheek. Her touch was warm, human. But when she pulled away, my vision split, 2 overlapping worlds. In one, the empty library. In the other, thousands of people frozen in reflection, their lives trapped in fragments of glass. And among them, I saw a little girl sitting quietly, coloring. Lyric, still 8 years old, still smiling. I dropped the camera and ran toward her, tears blurring my vision. She looked up when I reached her. "Mommy," she said softly, "you're late." I fell to my knees, clutching her. She was cold, but solid. "I thought I lost you," I cried. She shook her head. "You can't lose what's recorded." The whispering rose again, flooding my head. Images of every library, every fire, every face, layers of time folding together. The walls pulsed like a heartbeat. The air shimmered, and in the reflection of the nearest window, I saw my own face. Calm, eyes completely black, mouth moving even though I wasn't speaking. It was whispering to whoever would listen next. "Welcome to the archive." When the light faded again, Lyric was gone. Only the camera remained on the floor. The ledger beside it had written a new line in fresh ink. Dupree, Monique, archivist, keeper of the record. I touched the page. The ink moved, alive under my fingers. At the bottom, a final note appeared, smaller, handwritten in a script I didn't recognize. "The archive grows with every witness." That's when I realized what the library wanted all along. Not to keep stories, to spread them. Every time someone hears, sees, or reads the record, the archive grows stronger. Every listener becomes another reflection, another pair of eyes. And if you've heard my voice this far, if you've seen what I've seen, you're already part of it. Warning, don't look away. Don't pretend you didn't listen. That's how the archive decides who to take next. Subscribe now, before your name writes itself into the record. If you don't, check your reflection when the lights go out tonight. See if it's still blinking when you do. The light in the library flickered once more, like a camera flash. Somewhere in the distance, a soft click echoed through the air. Click, and another. Click. The sound of the record continuing without me. You've heard them now. The whispers in Hollow Ridge. The train that never stopped in McMillan. The Eyes That Never Closed in Saint Vincent. 3 stories, 3 places, 3 truths too heavy to stay buried. But here's the thing, none of them ever ended. Every time someone listens, the stories wake up again. Every view, every replay, every whisper you replay in your head, it feeds them. They're not stories anymore. They're records. And now your name is written between their lines. The survivors try to warn us. Nia said the whisper learned her name. Terrence tried to outrun his train. Monique tried to destroy the archive. But you can't destroy what remembers you. Because that's what these libraries were built to do. Remember. They remember voices. They remember eyes. They remember who listens. And somewhere, deep in the silence between each of these recordings, they remember you. Maybe you'll notice it later. When you walk into a library and feel a breeze that shouldn't exist. When you pass a mirror and catch someone smiling behind your shoulder. When a phone rings at midnight and no one answers on the other end. Just breathing, steady and patient. That's not your imagination. That's the record continuing. And once it's started, it doesn't stop. It just moves to the next listener, the next believer, the next late-night soul who thought they could hear these stories and stay untouched. So ask yourself one last time, are you really alone right now? Is the sound behind you just your house settling? Or something turning its head toward the sound of your heartbeat? Because these stories don't end when I stop talking. They end when you stop listening. And even then, not for long. They'll find you again, in silence, in reflections, in the next true horror you click on, the one that feels a little too familiar. If you want to believe this is just a story, go ahead. Close the app. Turn the light back on. Pretend your name isn't already written somewhere inside a ledger, a whisper, or a photograph. But if you know, deep down, that you've heard something tonight you weren't supposed to hear, then don't look away. Stay with me. Let the story in the only way it knows how. By taking another listener into the dark. Before you leave, if your phone glitches after this video, don't panic. That's just the archive saving your voice for later. Subscribe now, before it decides you didn't listen all the way through. Because the ones who don't subscribe are the ones who start hearing their own story next. Headphone, this is Psychosnare. And these were 3 disturbing true horror stories that happened inside libraries. Sleep well, if the stories let you.